So before we go into the nested for loop, so we can do a quick one. So in like math operation, so to calculate a number, so the power of a number, you would do like power of a number, then you pass in the first one, then maybe the third, the first and the second parameters here. So this will automatically like calculate, see out, then you should automatically calculate the power of 2 raised to 3. So that you should have included actually you should have included the math one so that it can allow you to use this library. So what happens in our case whereby we want to now perform this using nested for loop? So it's just like behind the scenes of the power in mathematics. So to do that, we are going to actually use number. So we're going to say int. So because you have, let's call it let's have the base number. So that should be the one we're going to raise in. So the base number, let's set it to maybe like 3. Then we have the power number. So I'm going to call this one the power number. Then we're going to set it to 2. So what we're going to do again is we don't want our integers to start at 0. So instead, let's say for example we are using this one. So int I. So let's say int I. We are assigning it to 0 because you are going to increment it automatically. Then we want to check for the condition here, for a certain condition, that while that condition or for that condition is true. So then I less than. So we want to check, we want to make sure that this I is less than the base number. Then we increment now the base number. So that we're going to increment the I plus plus. Then we want to now like print this out. Then of course maybe like we'd print something like so. At the end of this, while we've done executing this, then we want to maybe like tell our user that we are done. So maybe like the power of 2 is, then maybe just do it in a new line, though there's no need because this is actually like the last line. So while that condition is true, so to make sure that we don't start at 0, so let's declare 1. So let's say maybe that the final, so because it has to be an integer, so int, let's say power. No, okay, no, we're not going to use power because these are predefined keyword. So let's say like the power number. So let's assign it to start at 1, so that because we cannot raise maybe like a number 0 to a certain power. So we're going to say here that now our power number is the same as. So what we're going to do now is we're going to multiply it by actually like the power number, not the actually so we are having 2 variables actually. Sorry for that. So let's call it the results. So the results will now be equal to the results that should be at the start, that should be 1 raised to that number, so times the power number. So I think that's all you have to do. So make sure that everything is being matched by the condition. Now if you run this, you're going now to see that the power of 2 is something. We missed here something. That's now the results. So if you now run this, you see that the power of 2 is 8. So that should be now 2. So what this is doing is, behind the scenes, what's happening is, for the first time we are having the number 1. So 1, so we are setting it to 1. That should be 1. Then we are now setting in our power number. So the power number is 2. For the first time after the increment, it now goes to 2. So it becomes 2 for the first time, multiplied by 2. Then for the other time, it's being multiplied by 2 now for the that time. So that is how we actually like implement, let's call it behind the scenes of the power number in mathematics. So the next thing you wanted to do was a for loop, nesting a for loop. So for nesting a for loop, this will actually be like a for inside a for loop. So this is just a for loop inside a for loop. So let's say for loop. That I'm just going to comment this out so that our compiler doesn't complain, our IDE. So once we have that, so we need to say this is a nesting a for loop. So especially it will be used for maybe like iterating to maybe like coordinates, especially for for the aviation teams. So you use a lot of nesting for loops to like get to calculate coordinates or something. So for our case, let's just do a simple one, a simple array. So let's iterate through an array of elements, or maybe let's just some list. So let's okay, instead of array, so let's do a quick 2D list. So we're going to say maybe like I have an integer of coordinates. Coordinates is double O. So let me just like copy this just in case I need it, because this name is actually like too long. So let's say we have a 2D list. So remember that in our course, we the other last time we mentioned that coordinates, the 2D list always takes in two. So the first one will always be the rows, then that one will always be a column. So then we can now start assigning elements inside here. So I'm just going to make sure that my elements are in order. So maybe like, we now have these elements here. So let's say we have the first one is even number. So let's just have 3. So we add another one here. So let's say we have now odd numbers and 5. Then a comma. So then the other one is, let's have maybe like 2-digit number 10. 20 and 30. So this is how you declare basically a 2D list. You have to specify the number. So the rows are 3, the first one, and then the columns are also 3. So then that means the number of elements inside the first row. So remember, in indexing, this will always take up the first one is 0, 1, 2. So let's try to iterate through these elements inside this list. So to do this, we are going to start with a value. So we're going to say for, so let's say int, we've really used a lot of ij, so let's anyway go with that. So for int I equal to 0, then we're going to now say I less than. So let's first iterate through these rows. So less than, now 3 should be 3. Then we now say I plus plus. Then you open it. So we've already finished iterating through these rows. The next thing we want to do is we want to iterate through the columns. So again, we're going to say for maybe int. So let's j for this time. So let's just have ij. For int j, assign it to 0. Then j less than the number of elements. So remember, the number of elements here are 1, 2, and 3. So we have 3 elements inside. Then we can now like start by continue by incrementing its value. Then we now open it here. So this by doing so, we've already nested. We have 2 for loops. So we have the first for loop, then the second for loop. So that means we are actually like nesting the for loop. So what happens here now is we want to now access these elements. So to do that, we are going to say coordinates. So we're going to print out, so see out the coordinates, and then we have to print them in that order, I and j. So we end that with that. So what we're trying to do is we want to first print all the rows, then printing all the elements. So then we can now like do this by actually like printing it in actually a new line. So to do that, you have to use the end line. So you exit this such that all the rows and elements will now be printed in different lines instead of having them being nested on a loop. So let's run this and let's see what will actually be the output. So we are missing something here. Oh, sorry, we didn't close that, so we missed to close it. So the awesome thing about this editor is it tells you exactly where your error is, so it's easier for you to like debug your problem. So let's run, not your problem actually, but your code. You now find that we have these elements if they have already been printed. So what we can do is we can print them each and every one in its own new line. So see out, then end line. So running it, we now see that we are printing them on different new lines. So we can remove this one. So there's no need of this. So we went actually out of the loop. So if you now run it, you see now that we are printing exactly the way our elements are being arranged. So we have 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, then 135, 135, then we have 10, 20, and 30. So that was really something quick and awesome about the nesting of for loop. So you can see that we can now access nested or 2D list, or 2D maybe like arrays. If you really want to use that, access different elements having different number of rows and columns, make sure that you actually understand the way the for loops work. So let's get started now on functions.